Grace and peace, guys. GT the Vibe podcast coming at you with another episode. Had some sound technical difficulties, so I had to re-record this thing, but I'm gonna go back at it hot, just like I was hot on it a little bit ago. This one's gonna be talking about signs of a godly man and a woman in a marriage and a relationship. So we're talking about what God expects from men, what God expects from women, how they interact, how they react, and some of the things that happen, and why they happen. And then we'll talk about modern culture and how that kind of affects relationships and marriages. Even in Christians have issues in marriage because of what modern things have happened, as far as some of the movements that have happened. So we'll get into it. We're going to dive in deep. So we'll start with men here. Number one, or not number one, I don't have them labeled, numbered, because these are just some things that I saw personally as I was reading through and kind of going through some podcasts, listening to some other people, and some of the things that they talked about. These are things that I gathered that are important, and so these are the things I'm going to speak on. So, deep relationship with God. Men were created in God's image. So, and it tells you this in Genesis. We were created by God the Father. God created man in his own image and likeness and gave him dominion over the earth and his creatures. So he created men in his image and likeness and gave them dominion over the earth and all of his creatures. And so when he came to earth and he made man, because you got to think about this too, when Jesus came, Jesus was a man. Jesus was flesh and blood, a man, right? And so God is the only one that has the power to create that. So he created man in his image because he wanted to have something on the earth that was like him. He wanted something down here to be a symbol of what God is. And that's why he created man. So he created man because we have to be a symbol of what God is, right? And so as being a man, we have to have a great relationship with the Lord, right? We have to have a great relationship with him. We have to spend time with him. And you think about your buddies, your pals. Let's think about dads for a second. When you have a dad who's a great dad, you want to be just like your dad. Man, I want to be just like my dad when I grow up, because dad's taking care of business. He's handling what he needs to handle. That is your role model. That's who you want to be like. That's what it is for men and God. We should have the desire to be like the Lord. So when he brought Jesus down here, he gave us a flesh example of who we should actually be like. So when Jesus came down to earth and he was man, he was flesh and blood, God said, okay, here's the example. Because you guys couldn't get it right the first time, let me show you something. Let me give you something that you can see visually, physically, and you can hear, right? You got all your senses can be worked because Jesus was flesh and blood. And let me show you what it's actually supposed to be like. So when you look at Jesus and his walk on the earth, he was a man. He was a leader. He loved, he cherished, right? He protected, he sacrificed. Those are some things that go into your relationship with God. You have to be willing to do those things, because at the end of the day, you got to sacrifice what was for what will become as men. And so he desires for us to have a deep relationship with God who created us. Second thing on my list. I'm going to get a lot of flack from people, because let me tell you something. And the ones who get this one right are non-Christian women. Let me break this thing down. Hard workers. He desires for men to lead by example. Hard workers who lead by example. That's what he wants from men. Hard workers. 1 Timothy 5:8 says, but if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially his immediate family, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. So you're a man and you're not working and providing for your family, for who you're in charge of, who God gave you. He gave you this, and you're a leader. You're the man of the house. You're in charge of them. If you're not providing for them, you're worse than an unbeliever. Said that in 1 Timothy 5:8. But they won't say that in churches. They don't want to say that in churches to you because they don't want to ruffle no feathers. But I don't care if I ruffle all the feathers. They need to be ruffled. Men are created to be hard workers. God desires for us to be hard workers. Proverbs 12:11 gives you a little bit more in depth on what he expects. So Proverbs 12:11 says, those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense. So you have no sense if you're not out here providing for your family. Chasing fantasies, chasing dreams and all that jazz sounds all good, but the man that God created gets it done. Now, can you have dreams? I'm not saying don't have dreams, but I'm saying to make sure that while you're having your dreams, that you're still taking care of business out here. God expects men to provide. He expects us to provide. That's why he put us here, right? Because we're supposed to have dominion over the earth. You can't have dominion over the earth and its creatures if you ain't providing nothing, if you're not doing nothing, right? It talks about laboring with your hands, right? On your crops, you're taking care of business, you're handling business. Now, the conglomerate of women that actually get this right are non-Christian. If you listen to people, if you listen to women talk, non-Christian women understand this part. Why? Ask yourself, why do non-Christian women understand that being a hard worker is actually a godly trait? Because Christian women, I won't say godly, I'll say Christian women aren't being told that. They're not being told that. They're being told the first one. A man's got to have a deep relationship with Jesus. He's got to do this, he's got to do that. And they're given a list. So you get this list of stuff. And on most Christian women's lists, it will not say hard worker. Because they themselves don't believe that that is actually a trait of a godly man. Although God said it's a trait of a godly man in his word. But because it's not being talked about in churches, because churches don't actually want to have people be godly men, they want a little bit more sensitized, right? So they'll talk about feelings and all that jazz. But nowhere on my list are you going to see emotions and feelings. I'm a practical person, so I will speak in practical things. I will not speak in things that can be, because a hard worker is a hard worker, no matter how you spin it. Now, being in touch with your emotions depends on who's talking about it, right? Being a hard worker is a hard worker. Having a deep relationship with God, you see that, you know that. You can't sit here and debate that because you'll know it. You'll know about how they walk. Do they walk like Jesus walked on this earth, right? Do they walk like Jesus walked? That's the question that you have to ask yourself. So that's crazy. Let me read Proverbs 12:11 again. Let me read it one more time. Those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense. So if you are married to a Christian and they don't have this on their list for what they want their husband to be, tell them to go ask God to help them make their list, because they made their list personally off their own beliefs, but not off of God. If they desire a godly man, they will go to the Bible, and the Bible will tell them what a godly man is. The Bible literally lays out what a godly man is. But the problem is that there's no teaching on being a godly man. There's no teaching on being a godly woman. There's only teaching on motivating you. We just want to motivate you guys so you can go to heaven. But there's no actual teaching to break it down and tell you that's a godly man trait, hard worker. I like to hear that because I'm a hard worker. So when I read that in the Bible, I about jumped for joy. I was like, man, at least something I'm doing is a godly trait, because that's a godly trait. Because most Christian women will disagree with that trait there. All right. Women. Number one on my list, not number one, just saying number one, but specifically. But this is the one thing that I think that I've seen in a lot of things that godly women possess, the ability to respect and value their husband. Respect and value their husband. And I think that respect and value is something that feminism has kind of drawn a line in the sand. Oh, you can't do that. You can't respect them and you can't value them, because if you respect them and you value them, then you're allowing them to be head. And we don't want to allow them to be head, because if they're head, then women have less value. That's BS. Women don't have less value. So understand that, number one. And most women who struggle with the respect and value piece, it's because they're in competition with their significant other. They're in competition, so they want to be this. Society has taught women that they need to be this stuff over here. Hard worker, wisdom filled, deep relationship with God. That's filled with love. That's what society told them. You guys can be this over here. You don't have to be this. You can be this over here, right? We don't need anybody to be this over here. We need you guys to be this, right? But the problem with that is God didn't create women to be that. God created women to be a certain thing, and the Bible also tells you that. So if you have a husband and he got a list of things, he says, I want my wife to be like this, and his list ain't consistent of things that the Bible says, then you need to tell him to check with his heart, get back with God, and then maybe God can help him build a better list. But typically women in competition have problems, have issues respecting and valuing their husband, right? Because they want to be the leader. They don't want to see somebody else as a leader. But understand this, 99.9% of Christian women have the ability to respect and value a man, right? Because they respect and value their pastor. So they have the ability to respect and value a man. It's just a choosy thing. Oh, I'm going to choose. Or you might have an issue of the heart. And a lot of times you have an issue of the heart. The problem is that you have to have this, or you have to have certain accolades, or you have to do this, or you have to do certain things for them, or you have to do things their way, right? If you don't do things their way, then they won't respect and value your opinion because you're not doing it the way they want you to do it, and that's the problem. So a woman who's like that, who thinks, okay, you got to do it the way I want to do it, is typically somebody that's in competition with their husband. They over here. So then you got two men. You got a woman trying to be a man who can't even be a man anyway because it's not in their nature to be a man. Then you got a man trying to be a man. So you got two men in a relationship, although you have a man and woman relationship. That's what happens when the competition happens. And the competition usually happens because of society, because of our culture. So they allow this stuff in. Feminism allowed this stuff in to where now it's not okay to be a woman. Everybody has to be men. We just need a whole bunch of men out here, right? Let me get off respect because I can talk about that all day. You guys know I had the podcast started on talking about respect, so I go there all day long. But the number one conflict for Christian women when it comes to respecting and valuing their husband is that they're in competition. They're in competition. They want that spot. It's selfish to want that spot when you know you can't even handle that spot. If you know you can't handle that spot, then you don't need it. But when a man is doing what he's doing, or if you don't value what God told you to value in a husband, then that's another problem. But that's I can do a whole nother podcast on that. Number two, or the second thing on the list, not number two, but the second thing. And understand, guys, I'm not putting everything, there's millions of things. These are just some things that really popped out to me. Selfless, humble, and generous. Right? So they talk about a virtuous woman. And I'm going to read Proverbs in a second. But selfless, humble, and generous. Selfless, humble, and generous. It's hard to be selfish if you're a woman and you got kids. Hard to be selfish. Can women be selfish with kids? Yes, they can. But it's hard to be. It's not it's in woman's nature to be selfless. Now, if you're in competition with your husband and you're trying to be this stuff over here, you're going to have trouble with the selfless part, with the humble part. You're going to struggle with those two things. And you'll struggle with those two things because you're in a battle with yourself. You're trying to be something that you're not instead of being what God asked you to be. And so in Proverbs 10, it talks about a virtuous woman. The Bible literally tells you everything you need to know, but for some odd reason, people don't want to read it. Right? People don't want to read it. So let's go Proverbs 10. Let's see. Phone being kind of slow. Proverbs 31, 10 through 31. Who can find a virtuous woman, for her price is far above rubies? The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. Right? She seeketh wool and flax, and worketh willingly with her hands. She is like the merchant's ships. She bringeth her food from afar. She riseth all while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her household and a portion of her maidens. She considereth a field, and buyeth it. With the fruit of her hands she planteth a vineyard. She girdeth her loins with strength, and strengtheneth her arms. She perceiveth that her merchandise is good. Her candle goeth not out by night. She layeth her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold the staff. She stretcheth out her hand to the poor, She reacheth forth her hands to the needy. Generosity. She's not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She maketh herself covering of tapestry. Her clothing is silk and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sitteth among the elders of the land. She maketh like fine linen, and selleth it, and delivereth girdles unto the merchant. Strengthen and honor her clothes, and she shall rejoice in time to come. And so it talks about a virtuous woman. Virtuous women aren't just growing on trees. How many times have you guys ever seen $100 bill just laying out on the street? That's how rare an actual virtuous woman is. And so the Bible calls for women to be, it speaks right there. Generosity. A godly woman is going to naturally be generous. They will naturally give to the needy, right? Naturally give to the needy. So they give to the less fortunate. Has a giving heart. A heart to help others in need, right? Humble. Somebody is a woman that's humble. Humble in that she doesn't have to go out here and dress like these other people. She doesn't have to go out here and act like these other people, right? You can tell when she walks what she's about. There's no question what she's about. You can tell by how she walks. She's selfless, not selfish. And let me tell you, feminists finna come on here with all the comments and start talking that trash. Y'all can talk all the trash you want to, but you're not a virtuous woman. And if you're a Christian woman and you don't possess the selfless, humble, and generous mindset, you might need to go check your heart in at your nearest church. Or they might not be teaching you what they need to be teaching you. But generous, giving to the needy, right? Humble, able to bring yourself down to a level of understanding to where you can have conversations with those that are less fortunate. It's hard to have conversations with those that are less fortunate if you think that you're high up on a pedestal. In my line of work, what I do, I'm forced to have conversations with people, but I never really had a whole lot. So it's easy for me to understand people that don't have a lot because I never had a whole lot. Selfless, not selfish. It's hard for a mother to be selfish, right? So let's break down this generosity, this humble, this selflessness real quick. Let's break it down to a couple pieces, a couple things that I've seen over time. Number one, tithing at church does not make you generous because you're expecting to get something out of that. So that's not generosity. That's not giving. They call it giving, but it's not giving. Tithing is not giving. If you think that that's giving, you need to go back and read what it actually is. When they say give to the needy, that means give to the less fortunate. That means you actually go give to people that need what you're getting, that need what it is that you're handing out to them. Whether it's a meal, whether it's some water, whether it's some money, whether it's clothing, shoes, socks. There are people out here that need these things. And with as many, and I'm from Wichita, Kansas, and generosity goes hand in hand for men and women. I'm going to go generosity for a second. There are so many churches in Wichita, and the amount of homeless people out here that are struggling, that don't have nothing to eat, that don't have food, that don't have clothing. With as many churches as we have in Wichita that aren't generous, that say they're generous, but they're not generous, we can solve that problem quickly. But not enough of us are actually godly. Most of us are just religious, right? So we'll go give to the church. We'll go give to the church building. We'll go give our time to that bubble, to the same thing over and over again when there's people in need out here. Jesus, when he walked the earth, if you want to live a life that's Christ-like, when Jesus himself walked the earth, right? So he walked the earth. He went. He broke bread, right? Turned water into wine. He was feeding the people that were less fortunate, the people that needed it. That's the crowd he was in. He did not keep himself into this, I'm in a bubble, I'm on a pedestal crowd of, I'm just going to go with these people. I'm going to give to the same people that I've been giving it to for years. I'm not going to go and give nothing to nobody else. And I'm going to call that generosity. That's not generosity. That's friendship. You got friends, so you're just giving to your friends. Like if I go give something to my friend right now, to my friends, that doesn't make me generous. What makes me generous is giving some things to people that need it, people that don't have anything. Being okay with walking down on South Broadway in Wichita, Kansas, and you see some homeless people and they hungry, and then you go feed them. Or if you see a guy that needs a bag, so you give them your bag. Or if you see a guy that don't got no clothes, you see a woman. There's kids that are homeless on our streets in Wichita, Kansas. And all of the hundreds of churches that we got in Wichita that could help solve this problem, they won't, because there's not godly people inside these buildings. You won't find a lot of godly people. Let's be honest. I mean, they're gonna go ahead and probably try to cancel me, but you can cancel me if you want to. The Lord's gonna keep bringing me back for some more. Generosity. I don't think that that's just a trait for women. I think that's a trait for men as well. I think that men have to be generous as well. Because at the end of the day, who is going to teach generosity in the house? Men. We're probably going to teach generosity in the house. And so if you don't have the spirit of giving to those that are less fortunate, how can you say that you're even close to being Christ-like? Because that's one of the things that you read stories about him always doing. He was washing the feet of people. I mean, he is the Lord himself. He would humble himself. That's the mindset of humble, the mindset of humbling yourself down to a level. He humbled himself down to a level where he was okay with giving to people that were less fortunate. But we can't do that in churches nowadays. We got to give to ourselves, and we got to keep giving to ourselves. Because essentially that's what it is. It's like you're having a friends group and you're passing a collection plate around to your friends group. But all the money stays here. Does that sound like generosity? Some of y'all need to look up the definition of generous, and then y'all gonna find out that y'all not generous, and that's okay. It's something that you gotta. What's the matter of the heart? It's something that you need to work on. If you can give money to the church, and you can give money to a building, you can give money to go overseas, you can give money to go over to another country, and you got people over in another country, we're gonna go help them, but we got less fortunate people that are in our backyard right now. But we can't help them though. We can't help the people that are in our backyard. We're not generous. No. We're not generous. There ain't no tax breaks in giving money to the needy in your own backyard. Make sure y'all mark that part too. All right, men, wisdom filled. Men of God, godly men, are wisdom filled, right? We are filled with love and wisdom, and we give that wisdom and love to our kids and our family, our spouses. We give it, we pass it down. We're passing it down, right? Underneath wisdom, we're gonna add immovable. Men, godly men of God, are immovable, and they possess the ability to stand firm in the faith. Stand firm, because you notice that the serpent didn't come to men, the serpent went to women. He knew what he was doing. He ain't stupid. He did not come to us because we were built to be immovable, right? So if you know the love of God and you know his commandments, you know what he wants you to do, you can't be turned. You can't be deceived, right? But sometimes people get deceived because they just not paying attention. So understand that. Wisdom filled with love, right? Those things all go hand in hand, because you got the wisdom, you got the love that comes from that number one thing, being in a great relationship with God the Father, the one who created man in his image in the first place. If you have that, these other things become more easy. Right? They become more easy. You're wisdom filled. You're filled with love, right? You're filled with the relationship with God. So then you pass that down to your kids. You're able to be a leader. You're able to teach and do the things that you're supposed to do because you have that number one thing first. And honestly, you can't even have that. Like, you got to be a hard worker too, because it takes a lot of hard work to get into the type of relationship with God that you absolutely need. It takes hard work. You have to have that ability to be a hard worker. Women, prudent. Proverbs 19:14 talks about a prudent wife. Let me go to Proverbs 19:14. Hopefully don't give me the version where I have to sound like I'm from ancient times. House and wealth are inherited from fathers, but a prudent wife is from the Lord. Fathers can give their sons an inheritance of houses and wealth, but only the Lord can give an understanding wife. Only the Lord can give this. Prudent. Understanding, right? Prudent means one who is wise and understanding. And so, as God is who gave you man, so men come from God, right? And so a prudent wife, an understanding and wise wife, can only come from the Lord. So you know for a fact, if your wife is prudent, that only comes down from God. If she's wise and understanding, right, nurturing, some things that go into this category, that only comes from the Lord. The Lord can only give that. That's not going to come from Satan. That's going to come from the Lord. So they possess the ability to assist in growth. When you have a prudent wife, they possess the ability to assist in growth. So as the man leads the family, hardworking, wisdom filled, he's filled with love, he's passing this thing down, his wife is helping this man grow. So he's getting better here at the top. Typically, when you got a good wife, a good companion in your corner, I'm not going to say partner because they're not partners. It's a good companion. There is wife, husband, but there's a companionship that matters. And look up companion. Look up what a companion is. That's the ultimate goal for your relationship, is that you become companions. But somebody who's prudent. So godly women are going to be wise and understanding, right? But that only comes from the Lord. Like it literally says that in Proverbs 19:14. Read the verse. I'll read it one more time. House and wealth are inherited from fathers, but a prudent wife is from the Lord. Fathers can give their sons an inheritance of houses and wealth, but only the Lord can give an understanding wife. Only the Lord can give that. So if she's prudent, right, wise and understanding, that only comes from the Lord. From Proverbs 19:14. With that being said, that's what I've got as far as some of the things that really stuck out to me. So think on that. Pray on it. Seriously, pray on it. I pray that the understanding is clear, that people can change. I pray that pastors start talking about it, because I don't think I've ever heard this in church talked about. I don't think churches really talk about what God expects from men. I don't think churches really talk about what God expects from women. They don't really talk about it. It's more motivational type of stuff that goes on, but we need to be teaching these things, because you have to understand what a godly man is. Like if you're a woman and you're a Christian and you're single and you're like, man, I need to find me a godly man, and your list of what a godly man is totally different than what God has told you that he wants, what he told you that he was desiring, right? Then you're not looking for a godly man. You're looking for somebody to fit your needs. Men, right? If you're a single man and you're a Christian, you're in church, and you're like, man, I need to find me a woman, and your list doesn't have these things on it that we have, apparently move out the way so you can see it. So we got these things. If men don't have some of these things on their list, understand this. You're probably not looking for a godly woman. You're looking for somebody who fills your needs, right? And a person that fills your needs, those needs change, right? Over time, those needs change. If you're looking for somebody to just fill your needs right now, today, will they fill your needs 10 years from now? Those are the questions you must ask yourself. Or would you rather have somebody that possesses these godly traits that we talked about back here, right? And so you have to think about that, and you have to think about what it means for the future. And I think that in relationships, when you're out here and you're got your list and you're like, I want the handsome guy and I want the tall dude and I want him to dress nice and all that jazz, if you don't got some of this, like if he dressed nice but he ain't a hard worker, he ain't gonna be dressing nice for long, right? If he dressed nice but he doesn't have a deep relationship with God, how he gonna lead you? if he's not wisdom filled and passing it down, if he's not filled with the love of Jesus Christ, like if he's not filled, how you gonna have somebody, if your cup going down and you need some more in your cup, you need it to be filled, and you got a man that keeps filling himself up, and he pours some in your cup, and then he keeps getting filled, right? So his cup gonna keep filling, but he will keep your cup full too, right? Or you just gonna have that tall man. Men, if she ain't respectful and value and she don't show that, you can't change that. That's a matter of the heart. That's a woman that's in competition. Selfless, humble, generous. If they don't possess those abilities, understand this. It's easier to be selfish than it is to be selfless. And so if somebody doesn't possess the abilities of selflessness and being humble and being generous, you might be dealing with a selfish individual. And do you want to deal with a selfish individual? You have to ask yourself that question. Prudent, wise, and understanding. I tell you what, there's no creature on this earth more understanding than a woman. That is definitely truly sent by God, for sure. But that's all I got for you today. If you like our stuff, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, share it. I'll be having another episode this week with my buddy Clint, and we're going to be talking about some stuff. I'll have the girls back on for the relationship team. That's what I call them. And we're going to continue to push. We're going to continue to talk about things that they don't want to talk about. We're going to continue to push buttons that aren't always pushed, that need to be pushed, but most people don't want to push them because they're afraid to push them, but we'll push them here at the Vibe Podcast. This is GT again. Again, be a light. I'm out.